My name is Felicia, and I am 32 years old. There were two people in this world I trusted with my entire heart, my husband Marcus and my younger sister Danielle. I believed they would never hurt me. I believed we were a family built on love and loyalty. But one Friday evening, while babysitting my niece Sophie, I opened a closet door and discovered something that shattered everything I thought I knew. Before I begin this story, let me know where you are watching from today. Hit that like button and subscribe if you have not already. Now let me take you back to where it all began. I grew up in a small town in Ohio, the kind of place where everyone knows everyone and Sunday dinners are sacred. After college, I stayed close to home, finding a job at a local accounting firm where I have worked for 7 years now. The work is steady, the people are kind, and I have built a comfortable life for myself. 3 years into my marriage to Marcus, we finally saved enough to buy our first home together. It was a modest 2-bedroom house with pale blue shutters and a small front yard where I planted roses every spring. The living room had large windows that let in the afternoon sun, and the kitchen became my favorite place to unwind after long days at work. Every evening I would stand at the stove preparing dinner, listening to music, feeling grateful for the simple life we had created. Marcus came into my life 8 years ago at a birthday party thrown by a mutual friend. I remember seeing him across the room, tall with warm brown eyes and an easy smile that made me feel instantly comfortable. He approached me that night and we talked for hours about everything and nothing. He was 35 now, a construction engineer who took pride in his work and spoke passionately about building things that would last. What drew me to him was his patience. He never rushed me, never pressured me, always seemed to appear exactly when I needed someone. Our courtship was old-fashioned in the best way. He brought me flowers on our dates, remembered the small details I mentioned in passing, and always walked me to my door. When he proposed after 3 years of dating, I said yes without hesitation. Our wedding was small but beautiful. We held it in a garden venue just outside of town with about 60 guests, mostly family and close friends. I wore my mother's veil, the one thing I had left of her, and Marcus cried when he saw me walking down the aisle. That was 5 years ago, and since then, he had been everything I hoped for in a husband. He remembered our anniversary every year, surprising me with handwritten cards and small, thoughtful gifts. Every morning, he would wake up before me to brew coffee, and by the time I stumbled into the kitchen, there would be a warm mug waiting on the counter. In the evenings, he would ask about my day at work, genuinely interested in the mundane details of spreadsheets and client meetings. I felt seen. I felt cherished. I felt lucky. My sister Danielle is 4 years younger than me. She is 28 now, with the same dark hair and green eyes we inherited from our mother. We lost Mom when I was 15 and Danielle was just 11. A car accident on a rainy November night took her from us without warning. Our father did his best, but he was a quiet man who processed grief through silence rather than words, so I stepped up. I became the one who braided Danielle's hair for school, helped her with homework, sat with her when she cried at night missing Mom. We grew incredibly close through those years of loss. She was not just my sister. She was the person I had helped raise the person I would protect no matter what. Danielle married young at 23 to a man named Kevin, who seemed charming at first, but revealed himself to be controlling and distant. They divorced 2 years ago after Danielle discovered he had been lying about money and seeing other women. The divorce left her broken, but also gave her Sophie, her 4-year-old daughter, who became the light of her life. After the divorce, Danielle moved into a small apartment about 20 minutes from my house. I tried to help wherever I could. I babysat Sophie on weekends, lent Danielle money when she was short on rent, and called her almost every day to check in. I wanted to make sure she knew she was not alone. Marcus and Danielle got along well, or so I thought. When we all spent time together, there was an easy warmth between them. Marcus would joke around with Sophie, spinning her in circles until she squealed with laughter. He would help Danielle with things around her apartment, fixing a leaky faucet here, assembling furniture there. I encouraged it. I loved seeing my husband treat my sister like family. When Danielle's car broke down last summer, Marcus spent an entire Saturday under the hood getting it running again. I brought them both lemonade and watched them work together, feeling grateful that the two people I loved most in the world cared for each other too. It never once crossed my mind to be suspicious. Why would I be? This was my husband. This was my sister. They were my safe harbor in a world full of uncertainty. Looking back now, I realize I was living in a carefully constructed illusion. But at the time, standing in my cozy kitchen watching my husband and sister laugh together over Sunday dinners, I truly believed I was the luckiest woman in the world. The first signs appeared about 6 months before that Friday night, though I did not recognize them for what they were at the time. Marcus started coming home later than usual. At first, it was just an extra hour here and there. He would text me saying the new construction project was demanding more overtime, that the client was difficult, that he had to stay late to review plans with his team. I believed him completely. Marcus had always been dedicated to his work, and I admired that about him. So when dinner grew cold on the table waiting for him, I simply wrapped it in foil and left it in the fridge for him to heat up when he arrived. But then I noticed changes in how he handled his phone. It used to sit face up on the coffee table or kitchen counter, forgotten for hours at a time. Now it was always face down, or it was in his pocket, or he would take it into the bathroom with him, something he had never done before. One evening I walked into the living room and saw a notification flash on his screen before he quickly swiped it away. I caught a glimpse of a heart emoji, just a quick flash of red before the screen went dark. When I asked who texted him, he said it was just a coworker sending a funny message. His smile seemed tight-forced. I told myself I was being paranoid. Work colleagues send emojis all the time, I reasoned. It meant nothing. There were also the phone calls he would take outside. We'd always been open about our conversations. I would chat with Rachel on speakerphone while cooking dinner, and Marcus would answer calls from his boss right at the table. But now, when his phone rang, he would glance at the screen, mumble something about needing to take this and step onto the back porch. Sometimes he would be out there for 20 minutes or more, pacing back and forth, his voice too low for me to hear through the glass door. When he came back inside, I would ask if everything was okay, and he would nod, saying it was just work stuff, nothing to worry about. I wanted so badly to believe him that I convinced myself to ignore the knot forming in my stomach. While Marcus was changing, so was Danielle. My sister, who used to call me almost every day, began reaching out less and less. Weeks would pass without hearing from her unless I initiated contact. When we did talk, our conversations felt different. She seemed distracted, giving short answers, laughing nervously at things that were not funny. When I suggested she come over for dinner on Saturday like we used to do, she would make excuses. Sophie has a cold. I already made plans with a friend. I am just really tired this week. The excuses piled up until I stopped asking. I worried that maybe she was depressed after the divorce, that maybe I was not doing enough to support her. But every time I tried to have a deeper conversation, she would deflect, change the subject, find a reason to hang up. 3 weeks before that fateful Friday, I decided to surprise Sophie for her 4th birthday. I bought a beautiful stuffed unicorn and drove to Danielle's apartment without calling ahead. As I pulled onto her street, I saw a familiar truck parked 2 blocks away. It was Marcus's truck, the dark blue Ford, with the dent on the rear bumper from when he backed into a mailbox last winter. My heart skipped, but I told myself there was probably a simple explanation. Maybe he was helping Danielle with something and forgot to mention it. I parked behind his truck and walked to the apartment, letting myself in with the spare key Danielle had given me. The apartment was quiet. Sophie was napping in her room. I found Danielle in the kitchen, and she jumped when she saw me standing in the doorway. Her face flushed red, and she stammered something about not expecting me. I asked if Marcus was here since I saw his truck outside. Danielle's eyes darted to the side before she shook her head. No, she said, nobody has been here. It must be someone else's truck. There are a lot of blue trucks around. I accepted her explanation because I wanted to believe it. I gave her the gift, for Sophie stayed for a few awkward minutes of stilted conversation, then left. That evening, Marcus came home around 7, same as usual. He said he had been at the job site all day, stuck in meetings and dealing with permit issues. I almost asked about his truck, about why it was parked near Danielle's apartment, if he was at work all day. but the words caught in my throat. What if I was wrong? What if I accused my husband of something terrible based on a coincidence I did not want to be that wife, the suspicious one who sees betrayal in every shadow? So I swallowed my questions and kissed him hello, hating myself a little for the doubt I could not quite shake. A few days later, I met my best friend Rachel for lunch at our usual cafe downtown. Rachel and I have been friends since high school, and she is one of the few people I trust completely. Over salads and iced tea, I found myself confiding my worries. I told her about Marcus coming home late, about his phone behavior, about the truck outside Danielle's apartment. Rachel listened carefully, stirring her tea with a frown. She told me that I should trust my husband, that marriage requires faith in each other. But she also said something that haunted me. She mentioned a friend of hers whose husband had an affair with her own sister. It destroyed the entire family, she said. The wife never saw it coming because she trusted them both completely. I shook my head firmly. Not Marcus, I said. Not Danielle. They would never do that to me. We are family. Rachel reached across the table and squeezed my hand. She said she believed me, that she was just saying I should pay attention if something felt off. I drove home that afternoon telling myself Rachel was being overly cautious, that my situation was different. But despite my reassurances, a seed of doubt had been planted deep in my mind. It was small, barely noticeable, but it was there, and it would not stop growing. The call came on a Thursday evening. I was washing dishes after dinner when my phone buzzed on the counter. It was Danielle, which surprised me since we had barely spoken in the past 2 weeks. Her voice sounded cheerful, maybe too cheerful, as she asked if I could do her a huge favor. She had a date the next night, Friday, with a guy she met on a dating app. His name was Brian, and they had been talking for a few weeks, and he finally asked her to dinner. She needed someone to watch Sophie for a few hours. Would I mind? I felt a rush of genuine happiness for her. Danielle deserved to move on from Kevin, to find someone who would treat her right. Of course I would babysit. I loved spending time with Sophie, and I wanted to support my sister in taking this step forward. I told Marcus about the plans that evening, and he nodded while scrolling through his phone. He said he would stay home and watch the game with his buddy Chris. Perfect, I thought. A quiet Friday for both of us. I arrived at Danielle's apartment at 6 the next evening. She answered the door looking more dressed up than I had seen her in months. She wore a green dress that brought out her eyes and had curled her hair into soft waves. Sophie immediately ran to me, wrapping her small arms around my legs. I picked her up and spun her around while Danielle gathered her purse and keys. She thanked me again, gave Sophie a kiss, and hurried out the door. I noticed she did not quite meet my eyes as she left. Sophie and I had a wonderful time. We made homemade pizza together, her small hands pressing down on the dough while I spread the sauce. She chose pepperoni and extra cheese, and we watched it bubble in the oven together. After dinner, we curled up on the couch to watch her favorite movie, a story about a brave princess who saves her kingdom. Sophie snuggled against me, her head resting on my arm, and I felt a pang of longing for children of my own. Marcus and I had talked about starting a family, but somehow the timing never seemed right. Maybe next year, we always said. Now, holding my niece close, I wondered why we kept waiting. Sophie fell asleep before the movie ended. I carried her gently to her bedroom, tucking her in beneath her favorite blanket decorated with butterflies. She murmured something in her sleep and rolled over, clutching her pillow. I stood in the doorway watching her for a moment, this precious child who had brought so much joy into our lives. Then I quietly closed the door and returned to the living room to wait for Danielle. Around 10, I heard Sophie cry out from her room. I rushed in to find her sitting up in bed, tears streaming down her face. She was asking for Benny, her stuffed bear. She could not sleep without Benny. I looked around her room, but the bear was nowhere to be seen. Sophie said Mommy put Benny in her closet because it needed to be washed, but she forgot to give it back. Still crying, she begged me to find Benny so she could sleep. I soothed her with promises that I would find Benny right away. I walked down the short hallway to Danielle's bedroom, a room I had only entered a handful of times before. The door was slightly open and I pushed it wider, reaching for the light switch. The room was neat and organized, a queen-sized bed with a lavender comforter, a dresser with framed photos, a large wooden closet against the far wall. I crossed to the closet and opened both doors, scanning the shelves for a stuffed bear. The top shelf held extra blankets and pillows. The middle section was filled with Danielle's clothes dresses and blouses hung neatly on hangers. The bottom held shoes and a few storage boxes. I crouched down, moving boxes aside, searching for the bear. And that is when my hand touched something that did not belong. It was leather, soft and worn. I pulled it out and stared at the object in my hands. A jacket. A brown leather jacket with brass buttons and a small tear near the left pocket. A tear I remembered because I had sewed it myself last winter. My heart stopped. I knew this jacket. I knew every inch of it because I had given it to Marcus for his 33rd birthday. It was expensive, more than I would normally spend, but he had admired it in a store window for months. I saved up and surprised him, and he wore it everywhere that fall. Inside the collar, I had sewn his initial in navy thread, a small M that only we knew about. My hands shaking, I turned the collar over. There it was. The navy M, slightly faded now, but unmistakable. This was Marcus's jacket, in my sister's closet. I sat back on my heels, unable to breathe. My mind raced through possible explanations. Maybe he left it here by accident when he was helping her with something. Maybe she borrowed it because she was cold. But even as I grasped for innocent reasons, I knew they did not make sense. Marcus had not mentioned being here recently. He said he was at work at the job site with his buddy Chris, and Danielle had said nobody came to visit. My fingers fumbled through the jacket pockets, hoping to find nothing, hoping for confirmation that this was all a misunderstanding. In the right pocket, I found a receipt from a restaurant I did not recognize, dated 2 weeks ago. In the left pocket, I found a folded piece of paper. I opened it slowly, my hands trembling so badly I could barely hold it still. The handwriting was Danielle's, loopy and familiar from years of birthday cards and grocery lists. The words blurred through my tears, but I read them anyway. Last night was perfect. Love you. The paper slipped from my fingers and floated to the floor. I sat there on the cold hardwood, surrounded by my sister's clothes and shoes and secrets, and I felt my entire world crack open beneath me. Every late night, every guarded phone call, every awkward excuse, it all made sense now, horrible and undeniable sense. My husband and my sister, the two people I trusted most in this world, they had betrayed me in the most devastating way possible. I do not know how long I sat on that closet floor. Minutes felt like hours. The jacket lay crumpled in my lap, and I kept staring at that note, reading those words over and over, as if they might change if I looked hard enough. Last night was perfect. Love you. The handwriting was unmistakably Danielle's. The jacket was unmistakably Marcus's. There was no innocent explanation, no misunderstanding to clear up. The truth was right there in my hands, and it was destroying me. Eventually, I forced myself to stand. My legs felt weak, like they might give out at any moment. I walked back to Sophie's room in a daze and found the stuffed bear on a shelf I had somehow missed. I gave it to her, and she smiled sleepily, hugging Benny close. I kissed her forehead and whispered good night, my voice barely steady. Then I returned to the living room and sat on the couch, staring at the wall, waiting. The tears came silently. I did not want to wake Sophie, so I pressed my hand over my mouth and let them fall. 8 years with Marcus, 5 years of marriage. All those mornings with coffee waiting on the counter, all those evenings asking about my day, all those promises we made at our wedding. Were any of them real? Had he been lying to me the entire time, or was this something new? Something that started after Danielle's divorce, when she was vulnerable and lonely, and Danielle, my baby sister. The girl I had practically raised after Mom died. I taught her how to do her makeup for prom. I held her hand through her wedding and again through her divorce. I defended her to relatives who thought she was too emotional, too needy, too much trouble. I loved her fiercely and unconditionally, and she repaid me by sleeping with my husband. The front door opened at 11:15. Danielle walked in, humming softly, her heels clicking on the floor. She dropped her purse on a chair and turned to face me, starting to ask how Sophie was. Then she stopped. She saw the jacket in my lap, the note in my hand, the tears on my face. Her smile vanished. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. I watched the color drain from her face, watched her mouth open and close without sound. Finally, I held up the note and asked her in a voice that did not sound like mine if she wanted to explain. Danielle took a step back, hitting the wall behind her. Her voice came out small and strangled as she said my name. She said she could explain. She said it was not what I thought. I laughed a harsh sound that scraped my throat. I told her I found this jacket in her closet, the jacket I gave my husband, the jacket with his initials sewn inside. And I found this note in her handwriting telling someone she loves them after a perfect night. So please, I said, explain to me how this is not exactly what I think it is. Danielle's composure crumbled. She slid down the wall until she was sitting on the floor, pulling her knees to her chest like a child. She started talking, the words tumbling out between sobs. She said she was sorry. She said she never meant for this to happen. She said it started about a year ago when Marcus came over to help her fix the bathroom sink. They were talking and she was crying about Kevin and the divorce, and Marcus was so kind, so understanding. One thing led to another, and they kissed, and she knew it was wrong, but she felt so lonely, and he made her feel wanted. I listened in horrified silence as she continued. She said they tried to stop multiple times, but they kept finding their way back to each other. She said Marcus told her things about our marriage. He said we had grown apart, that I was too focused on work, that he felt invisible at home. He said he was going to leave me, that he was just waiting for the right time. Danielle believed him. She believed they had a future together. My hands clenched into fists. I asked her if she honestly believed my husband when he said he would leave his wife for the woman he was cheating with. I asked if she had heard that story before, if she knew how often men said those exact words to keep their affairs going. Danielle just cried harder. She said she knew it sounded bad, but Marcus was different. He really loved her. He was going to tell me soon. They were going to be together. The rage building inside me threatened to overflow. A year. They had been doing this for a year, lying to my face, pretending everything was normal. Every Sunday dinner, every family gathering, every moment I felt grateful they got along so well. They were laughing at me behind my back, making a fool of me in my own life. I stood up slowly, leaving the jacket on the couch. I told Danielle I was going home now. I told her she should not contact me. I told her that as of this moment, I did not have a sister anymore. Danielle scrambled to her feet, reaching for me, begging me to wait to let her explain more, to give her a chance. I stepped out of her reach and walked to the door. Just before leaving, I turned back. I told her I hoped he was worth it. Then I walked into the night and drove home with tears streaming down my face. The house was dark when I arrived. Marcus's truck was in the driveway, which meant he was home from watching the game with Chris. Or had he even gone to Chris's house at all? Had he spent the evening with Danielle, knowing I would be out of the way babysitting? The thought made me physically ill. I sat in the car for several minutes, gripping the steering wheel, trying to compose myself. Then I went inside. Marcus was asleep in our bed, sprawled on his stomach, breathing deeply. I stood in the doorway and watched him, this man I had loved for 8 years. This man I had built a life with. He looked peaceful, innocent even. How could someone capable of such betrayal sleep so soundly I wanted to scream at him, to shake him awake and demand answers? But something held me back. I needed time to think, to plan. I needed to be smart about this. I took a pillow and a blanket to the living room and spent the rest of the night on the couch. Sleep was impossible. I stared at the ceiling as hours crawled by, replaying every memory, every conversation, every suspicious moment I had brushed aside. By the time dawn broke through the windows, I had made my decision. I was not going to be a victim. I was not going to fall apart and beg for explanations. I was going to handle this with dignity and I was going to protect myself. The morning sunlight felt almost offensive, too bright and cheerful for the wreckage of my heart. I heard Marcus moving around in the bedroom, getting ready for his Saturday routine. I did not move from the couch. When he came into the living room and found me there, he looked confused. He asked why I slept out here if I was feeling okay. I told him we needed to talk. He sat in the armchair across from me, still half asleep, rubbing his eyes. I reached behind the couch cushion where I had hidden the jacket the night before. I pulled it out and laid it on the coffee table between us. Marcus stared at it, and I watched his face go through several transformations, confusion, recognition, then fear. He asked where I got that. I told him I found it in Danielle's closet last night while I was babysitting Sophie. Silence. Marcus opened his mouth. Closed. It opened it again. He started to say something about leaving it there by accident, that he was helping Danielle move some furniture. I cut him off. I told him to stop. I told him I also found the note, the one in her handwriting, saying last night was perfect, love you. I asked him if he wanted to keep lying or if he was finally going to tell me the truth. The color drained from his face. For a moment I thought he might keep denying it, might try to spin some elaborate story. But then something in him collapsed. His shoulders slumped and he dropped his head into his hands. When he looked up again, his eyes were wet. He said he was sorry. He said he never meant for it to happen. He said it started as a mistake and got out of control. I listened as he stumbled through his confession. He blamed loneliness, said he felt like we had drifted apart over the years. He blamed work stress, said the pressure was overwhelming, and Danielle was there, and she understood. He even tried to blame me, saying I was always so focused on my job that I did not have time for him anymore. He said he felt invisible in our marriage, like I did not need him. The audacity of it took my breath away. He cheated on me for a year with my own sister, and somehow I was supposed to bear some of the blame. I asked him if he ever considered talking to me about feeling disconnected instead of sleeping with Danielle. I asked if he ever considered marriage counseling, date nights, anything other than betraying everything we built together. He had no answer for that. Marcus slid off the chair and onto his knees in front of me. He grabbed my hands and said we could work through this. He said he would end things with Danielle right away completely. He said he would do whatever it took to save our marriage. He said he loved me, that I was his wife, that he made a terrible mistake, and he was begging for another chance. I looked at him, this man I thought I knew, and felt nothing but cold clarity. I told him he did not make a mistake. Mistakes happen once impulsively in moments of weakness. What he did was a choice made over and over again for 12 months. He chose to lie to me every single day. He chose Danielle over me repeatedly. He chose to let me believe in a marriage that was a complete fiction. Those were not mistakes. Those were decisions. I pulled my hands away and stood up. I told Marcus I wanted a divorce. I told him he had until the end of the day to pack a bag and leave. He could stay with his buddy Chris or with his parents or with Danielle for all I cared, but he could not stay here. This was my house, too, paid for with my money and my credit, and I was not going anywhere. He tried to argue, to plead for more time to talk. I did not waver. I told him I had nothing left to say. While Marcus packed, I made phone calls. First to my boss explaining I needed Monday off for personal reasons. Then to my best friend Rachel, who immediately said she would come over. Then to a divorce attorney whose name I found online, leaving a message asking for the earliest available consultation. I was building a wall around myself, brick by brick, refusing to let the grief in until I had secured my position. Rachel arrived within the hour. She held me while I cried the tears I had held back, finally breaking free. Between sobs, I told her everything: the jacket, the note, Danielle's confession, Marcus's pathetic excuses. Rachel listened without interrupting, stroking my hair, handing me tissues when I needed them. When I finished, she looked at me with fierce determination and told me I was going to survive this. She said I was strong and smart and I deserved so much better. She said we would get through this together. Around 3 p.m, my phone rang. It was Danielle. I stared at the screen, watching her name flash again and again until it went to voicemail. A minute later, she called back. And again. On the 5th call, Rachel told me to answer, to say what I needed to say and be done with it. I picked up. Danielle was crying so hard I could barely understand her. She kept saying she was sorry over and over, that she never wanted to hurt me, that she loved me, that she hated herself for what she had done. I let her talk until she ran out of words. Then I asked her one question. I asked how she could do this to me after everything we had been through together, after I practically raised her, after I spent my entire life putting her first. She did not have an answer, just more crying, more apologies, more empty words. I told her I could not talk to her anymore. I told her that when I looked at her now, I did not see my sister. I saw a stranger who had deliberately destroyed my life. Whatever we had, that bond we built from childhood, it was gone. She had killed it, and I was not interested in resurrection. Before hanging up, I told her not to call again. Then I blocked her number. Marcus left around 5, carrying 2 suitcases and a look of devastation that I might have pitied once. He stood at the front door asking one more time if there was anything he could do, any way to fix this. I told him no. I told him it was over. He nodded slowly and walked to his truck. I watched from the window as he drove away, taking 5 years of marriage with him. The house felt empty after he left, but it also felt cleaner, lighter, like I had finally opened a window and let out stale air. The weeks that followed were a blur of paperwork, phone calls, and forced functionality. I met with the divorce attorney 3 days after Marcus left. Her name was Sandra Chen, a sharp woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. She reviewed my situation and told me I had a strong case. Adultery was still grounds for divorce in Ohio, and with evidence of the affair, I could negotiate better terms for the settlement. She asked if I had documentation, and I showed her the photos I had taken of the jacket and the note. She nodded approvingly. The divorce process took 3 months from start to finish. Marcus did not contest it, perhaps out of guilt, or perhaps because his own lawyer advised him it was futile. We split our assets according to state guidelines, but because the house was primarily purchased with my savings and my credit history, I kept it. Marcus agreed to pay spousal support for 2 years, a small concession that my attorney secured during negotiations. When the final papers were signed, I felt a strange mixture of relief and grief, like closing a book that had both beautiful chapters and terrible endings. During those 3 months, I heard through mutual acquaintances about Marcus and Danielle. After leaving our home, Marcus moved directly into Danielle's apartment. For a few weeks, they played house together, the 2 people who had betrayed me now living their dream scenario. But reality has a way of sewering fantasies. Without the secrecy, without the forbidden thrill, their relationship began to crack. Marcus started staying out late, just as he had done with me. He became distant, spending more time on his phone, less time with Danielle and Sophie. The affair that had seemed so passionate and irresistible was losing its shine. About 2 months after the divorce was finalized, I ran into an old colleague who still lived near Danielle's neighborhood. She told me she had seen Marcus leaving the apartment one morning with suitcases, that there had been shouting, that Danielle was in the parking lot crying. Apparently, Marcus had found someone new, a woman from his workplace, younger and uncomplicated by family ties and shared guilt. He left Danielle just as carelessly as he had left me, proving what I already knew: a man who cheats with you will eventually cheat on you. While Marcus and Danielle's relationship crumbled, I focused on rebuilding my own life. I threw myself into work, taking on extra projects, staying late to prove my dedication. 6 months after the divorce, I was promoted to senior accountant, a position I had been working toward for years. My boss praised my focus and commitment, never knowing that I was channeling heartbreak into spreadsheets and client meetings. The raise that came with the promotion allowed me to pay off the remaining mortgage faster, making the house truly mine. Beyond work, I started taking better care of myself. I joined a gym near my office and began working out 3 times a week. At first, it was just a way to exhaust myself so I could sleep at night. But gradually, I started to enjoy it. The physical exertion cleared my head, and the small victories of lifting heavier weights or running longer distances gave me a sense of accomplishment that I desperately needed. I lost weight, gained muscle, and started to recognize the strong woman looking back at me in the mirror. I also made new friends. I joined a book club that met every other Thursday at a coffee shop downtown. The other members were women of all ages and backgrounds united by a love of reading and an appreciation for good conversation. We discussed novels and memoirs, but we also talked about our lives, our struggles, our hopes. I found myself opening up to them about my divorce, and they responded with empathy and their own stories of survival. I was not alone. So many women had walked through fire and come out stronger. On a whim, I signed up for a painting class at the local community center. I had always admired art, but never thought I had any talent for it. The instructor, a retired teacher named Margaret, gently encouraged me to stop worrying about perfection and just enjoy the process. So I did. My paintings were messy and amateurish, but creating them brought me peace. I hung them in my house, replacing the photos of Marcus that I had taken down months before. My home was slowly becoming a reflection of who I was, now not who I had been. One afternoon, about a year after the divorce, I was grocery shopping when I spotted a familiar figure in the produce section. It was Marcus holding a basket and examining avocados. He looked different than I remembered, thinner, tired, with gray creeping into his temples. When he saw me, his face went through a complicated series of emotions: surprise, guilt, hope. He set down his basket and walked toward me, saying my name like a question. I stood my ground as he approached. He asked how I was doing, if I was okay, if maybe we could get coffee sometime and talk. He said he had been thinking about me, that he missed me, that he had made the biggest mistake of his life. His voice cracked, and for a moment I saw genuine pain in his eyes. A year ago, those words might have shattered me. They might have made me hope, made me consider forgiveness, made me wonder if we could start over. But standing in that grocery store, healthy and strong and surrounded by the life I had rebuilt from the ashes of his betrayal, I felt only a distant pity. I told him I was doing well. I told him I hoped he found whatever he was looking for. Then I said goodbye, picked up my basket, and walked away without looking back. Later that evening, I stood in my kitchen making dinner music playing softly in the background. The house was quiet but not lonely. It was peaceful. I caught my reflection in the window above the sink and smiled. The woman looking back at me was someone I was proud of. She had been broken, but she had put herself back together. She had been betrayed, but she had chosen dignity over despair. She had lost a husband and a sister, but she had found herself. The first few months after discovering the affair were the hardest of my life. I will not pretend otherwise. There were nights when I could not sleep, when I lay awake replaying every moment, every sign I had missed, every lie I had believed. There were mornings when getting out of bed felt impossible, when the weight of grief pressed down on me like a physical force. I cried more in those months than I had in years, sometimes sobbing so hard I could not breathe, but I refused to let the pain consume me. After the first awful week, I called a therapist whose name Rachel had given me. Her name was Dr. Patricia Morrison, and she had an office in a quiet building near the river. At first, I was skeptical. I had never been to therapy before, and I worried about being judged or pitied. But Dr. Morrison was neither judgmental nor pitying. She listened to my story with calm attention, asked thoughtful questions, and helped me understand that what I was feeling was normal. She taught me that betrayal trauma is real and valid, that the symptoms I was experiencing, the insomnia, the anxiety, the constant replaying of events were common responses to profound violation of trust. She helped me see that I was not at fault, that nothing I did or did not do justified what Marcus and Danielle had done. Most importantly, she helped me forgive myself. I had blamed myself for not seeing the truth sooner, for being naive, for trusting too easily. Dr. Morrison reminded me that trust is not a weakness. It is the foundation of love, and the ones who abused it were the ones who should be ashamed. Over the months, therapy became a lifeline. I processed not just the affair, but years of patterns I had never examined. My tendency to put others first, my fear of conflict, my habit of ignoring my own needs to keep the peace. These patterns did not cause the betrayal, but recognizing them helped me understand who I wanted to become. I started setting boundaries in all my relationships. I started speaking up when something bothered me. I started choosing myself without guilt. 2 years after the divorce, I received a letter in the mail. The return address made my heart skip. It was from Danielle. I stared at the envelope for a long time before opening it. Inside was a handwritten letter several pages long with tear stains smudging some of the words. Danielle wrote about her regret, her shame, her understanding of the magnitude of her betrayal. She wrote about how Marcus had left her, how she had been forced to rebuild her life alone, how she had started therapy too. She wrote about Sophie, now 6 years old, and asking why she never saw Aunt Felicia anymore. She wrote that she did not expect forgiveness, did not deserve it, but she needed me to know how sorry she was. She ended the letter by saying she would always love me, that I was the best sister anyone could have, and that she would spend the rest of her life regretting what she had done. I read the letter 3 times. The first time I felt anger flaring up again, hot and familiar. The second time I felt sadness for the relationship we had lost. The third time I felt something unexpected, acceptance. Not forgiveness, not yet, maybe not ever, but acceptance that she was human and flawed and had made a terrible choice. Acceptance that I could not change the past. Acceptance that holding on to hatred was only hurting me. After much thought, I sent her a text message. It was short, just a few lines. I told her I had received her letter. I told her I was not ready to talk, but I appreciated her honesty. I told her I wished her and Sophie peace. That was all. I did not know if it was the beginning of reconciliation or simply a moment of grace before permanent goodbye. Either way, it felt like the right thing to do. Now, sitting in my living room, surrounded by my paintings and my books and the life I have created, I can look back at everything with clarity. The betrayal nearly destroyed me. For a while, I thought it had destroyed me. But pain, I have learned, is not the same as destruction. Pain can be transformed. It can become strength, wisdom, compassion. It can teach us who we really are when everything we thought we knew falls away. The lesson I want to leave you with is this. No one has the power to determine your worth except you. Not a cheating husband, not a disloyal sister, not anyone who has ever made you feel small or unimportant. The people who hurt us often do so because of their own brokenness, their own fears, their own failures. That does not excuse what they do, but it means their actions say more about them than they ever will about us. If you are watching this and you have been betrayed, I want you to know that you will survive. You will more than survive. You will rebuild. You will find new joy in unexpected places. You will discover strength you never knew you had. And one day you will look back at the darkest moment of your life and realize it was the doorway to becoming the person you were always meant to be. That jacket in the closet, the one that shattered my world. It turned out to be the key that unlocked my freedom. Sometimes our greatest losses lead to our greatest discoveries. And sometimes the people who hurt us the most are the ones who teach us the greatest lessons about our own power. Thank you so much for watching this video and for listening to my story. I hope it has touched your heart in some way. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever been betrayed by someone you trusted completely? How did you find the strength to move forward? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. If this video resonated with you, please give it a like so more people can find it. Subscribe to this channel if you have not already, and hit that notification bell so you never miss a new story. And if you know someone who might need to hear this message, please share this video with them. You never know whose life you might change by passing along a story of survival and hope. Wishing you peace, strength, and the courage to always choose yourself. Take care of your heart. It is precious and it deserves to be protected. Until next time.